I'm Qin Yan's shadow guard, someone who can never step into the light. To protect the woman he loves, he killed my cat and locked me in a water dungeon, teaching me word by word. Shadow guards don't need emotions. Eventually, I wanted to leave with someone else. But he canceled his grand wedding, trembling as he called out, "Subai, come back. I'll treat you well for the rest of your life, I swear." I stabbed the dagger into his body. "I don't believe you, my lord." 01. A new beauty had recently arrived at the prince's residence. She was delicate and alluring, her waist so slender it could be encircled with just one arm, soft as a fresh willow branch in spring. Qin Yan doted on her for quite a while. But for some reason, he hadn't visited her in some time. One day, she barged into his courtyard, loudly demanding to see him. The guards at the door, burly men, were completely thrown off by the beautiful woman yelling with raised brows. They didn't dare stop her outright, nor could they let her pass freely. They half-heartedly tried to block her way as she marched toward the study. Just as she reached the steps, I stepped forward and blocked her path. "The prince is handling important matters and cannot be disturbed. Miss, please return for now." She paused, gave me a once-over, then laughed out loud. "Don't you know who I am? A lowly maid like you dare stop me?" Unfazed, I lowered my eyes and replied calmly, "Please return, Mississippi. When the prince is free, he'll come see you himself." I wasn't lying. She was already the third woman Qin Yan had brought back. Not because he loved them, but because each one vaguely resembled the woman he truly cared about. This one looked even more like her. The previous two hadn't lasted long before disappearing. Qin Yan's temper was unpredictable. Anyone who entered the residence and wanted to leave to start over wouldn't be allowed to live. If she behaved, maybe she'd leave with some gold and jewelry, and her life. My indifference angered her. She pointed at me, her fingertip trembling. You insolent, disrespectful wretch." Just then, the door behind me creaked open. Light spilled in, casting a long shadow on the ground. The moment she saw Qin Yan, her fury disappeared. She rushed into his arms, acting sweet and pitiful, pointing at me and complaining I bullied her with his name. "In that case," Qin Yan said with a half-smile, his tone light, "Abai kneel." I was stunned, but dropped to my knees. "What did you do wrong?" Expressionless, I answered, "I should have thrown her out immediately." "You wretched thing. How dare you talk like that?" Embarrassed by my words, the woman's face turned bright red. Seeing Qin Yan's calm expression, she assumed he was backing her. Furious, she stepped forward and slapped me several times. Her sharp nails cut into my skin, leaving stinging pain on my face. But I didn't flinch. Qin Yan didn't stop her. He didn't say a word. He only curved his lips into a faint smile, one that never reached his eyes. That meant he was in a bad mood. 02. That night, just as I was about to sleep, the door creaked open. Qin Yan walked in. I assumed there was a new assignment, so I reached for my clothes. He grabbed my wrist. Before I could react, his fingers gently touched my face, cool and soothing. I caught the bitter scent of medicine and realized he was applying ointment to my wounds. I turned my head away and whispered, "Your servant is fine. Thank you for your concern, my lord." In the dark, I couldn't see his face clearly, but I heard him sigh softly before placing the ointment in my hand. "Keep it," he said casually. "You'll need it. The missions are only going to pile up." On the surface, I was just a maid by his side. In truth, I was the shadow guard he had trained for 8 years. 8 years ago, there was a fire. Blood flooded the grounds. Everyone in my household died overnight. I had been hidden under the kitchen stove by the old nursemaid and passed out. When I came to, I was brought before Qin Yan. I looked up. He didn't even glance at me, just toyed idly with a cup in his hand. He said lightly, "Follow me. Get stronger. That's the only way you live." Then he looked straight at me, lips curling into a smile. My heart froze when I saw his eyes, like a hunter staring at prey. "Do you believe me?" he asked. Someone beside him silently reached for the hilt of their sword. I closed my eyes, the image of that blood-soaked night flashing before me. I believe. Qin Yan set down his cup and suddenly smiled. His calloused fingers wiped the blood from my face. What's your name? Su Bai, I replied after a pause. Bai, as in the cypress tree. Qin Yan was the second prince of the empire. Reserved and strategic, his influence ran deep, enough to rival the crown prince. He was a master of disguise, never leaving a trace. I was his hidden blade, silently taking out anyone who opposed him. At first, the sight of blood made me faint. That night of carnage haunted me. I'd vomit just from the smell. But Qin Yan coldly watched as he forced my hand to slit the throat of a dying man on the ground. Warm blood splattered across my face. My legs buckled, and I retched until I blacked out. But over time, the wounds added up. Now, I could kill in one strike and calmly wipe the blood from my face. By day, I was an ordinary maid. By night, I wore a mask and took lives. Just as Qin Yan said, only by becoming strong could I survive. Sometimes, perched silently in a tree, I would look up at the bright moon. I'd remember the old nursemaid shoving me under the stove, her tear-filled eyes telling me not to make a sound. Word by word, she repeated what my mother had once said before taking her own life. Buyer, no matter what, you must survive. I had a dream. In it, my mother's face was twisted with grief and despair. Her eyes were wide open, staring directly at the terrified little me, frozen in the corner. 03. I jolted awake, realizing only after a moment that I was drenched in cold sweat. Trying to steady myself, I washed up quickly and stepped out, only to discover that the entire prince's residence bore no trace of that beautiful woman. It was as if she had never existed. I remembered the faint scent of blood on Qin Yan when he turned to leave last night, carried to me on the wind. She was probably dealt with by Qin Yan. I wasn't surprised. After following him for so long, I knew that no matter how gentle and affectionate his facade, deep down he was always cold, distant, and impossible to read. Like usual, I brought him a cup of honey tea I had prepared myself. I knocked, and only after hearing his voice did I enter. He looked like he hadn't slept all night. His voice was weary. There are sweet rice cakes on the table, still warm. I saved them for you. I loved sweet rice cakes. My mother had been the head cook in the estate. When she was still alive, she'd make me a plate of white sugar cakes every year for my birthday. They were soft, chewy, and sweet. The first time I completed a mission on my own was also my birthday. I was covered in blood, but it wasn't mine. My mother had once said, "Whenever you miss me, Buyer, just look up at the moon. I'll always be in the sky, watching over you." That night, the moon was especially round. I stared at it for a long time and wiped my tears hard. When I got back, I saw Qin Yan waiting at the door, holding a plate of perfectly round, snowy white rice cakes. When he saw me, the ice in his eyes melted into a soft, rare smile. Bai, well done on your mission. Happy birthday. I never knew how he found out. I only remembered that in that moment, my eyes filled with tears. The sweetness of the rice cake mixed with the saltiness of my tears. I thought for a moment I had a home again. Qin Yan sat beside me, chewing the cake and sipping tea. Seeing me dazed, he reached out and brushed the crumbs from the corner of my lips. What are you thinking about? Snapping back to the present, I licked my lips, flustered. And nothing. Qin Yan didn't seem to notice anything off. After finishing his tea, he wiped his hands with a cloth. I'll be attending a palace banquet in a few days. Instinctively, I asked, is there anything I should prepare? Normally, I accompanied him as his personal maid during such events. Qin Yan looked up, his black eyes unreadable. No, you won't be coming this time. You have a new mission. 04. I later heard a rough account of what had happened at the palace banquet. Qin Yan's beloved was the prime minister's daughter, Xu Yun. But she was also the crown prince's childhood sweetheart. Ever since the first woman who resembled Xu Yun entered the residence, all of the capital knew that Prince Li was infatuated with the prime minister's daughter, so obsessed that he sought out lookalikes. Naturally, Xu Yun attended the banquet. They said Qin Yan's eyes never left her, which angered the crown prince, who challenged him on the spot. Qin Yan accepted with ease. In the first round, he recited a stunning poem that drew applause from the entire hall. In the second, he shot an arrow that struck the red silk target 10 meters away, leaving the audience in awe. Even the emperor praised him generously. The crown prince's face turned dark, while Qin Yan and Xu Yun exchanged lingering, intimate glances. By the next morning, news had spread across the city. Prince Li and the prime minister's daughter were a perfect match, fated lovers. I knew full well Qin Yan didn't need me for a mission of that level. He didn't bring me because of Xu Yun. Thinking that made me lose focus. My opponent's blade nearly slashed my arm. Before dying, the man I was sent to kill stared at me and laughed with scorn. Dying for someone else, living a life licking blood off a blade. How pitiful. In the next instant, I slit his throat. Swallowing hard, I forced down the sudden bitterness rising in my chest. I was just a shadow guard, Qin Yan's well-honed blade. We lived in different worlds. Even though I knew better, I still couldn't stop the thoughts growing in my heart. At first, I believed Qin Yan was cold and unfeeling, so I feared him and avoided getting too close. Whenever he approached, I would freeze up, trembling. But when I was injured, it was him who carefully cleaned my wounds. He personally taught me close combat, holding my hand, showing me how to find an enemy's weak points. He had trained me with his own hands, shaped me into what I was. I had always tread carefully, never daring to cross the line. 05. Ever since the palace banquet, Qin Yan started leaving the residence more often. He went on spring outings with Xu Yun, accompanied her to buy cosmetics. He had taken me out once, too. My clothes were all old cast-offs from the young masters and ladies of the estate. As the days passed, my sleeves and pant legs had become far too short. Wei Song had been surprised. Xiao Bai's gotten this tall already? He was Qin Yan's trusted aide, always kind to me. When he first learned my name, he laughed and said it was fate. He wanted to make me his godsister. That very day, Qin Yan took me out to have a full set of new clothes custom-made. The finest fabrics. I was so nervous I could barely speak, and the shopkeeper teased, "Has this young girl never been here before? Is she new?" Qin Yan chuckled. "She's just a kid." Later, when I put on the new outfit, I was so stiff I nearly tripped on my skirt. Wei Song stared at me with wide eyes. "Oh my, Xiao Bai looks amazing." Qin Yan's gaze lingered on me for a second or two before he looked away, coughing into his fist. Not bad. Today I saw that same shopkeeper again. She came to the prince's residence, her servants carrying several new dresses. She said Qin Yan had ordered them for Xu Yun, and she was delivering them as requested. Before leaving, she smiled knowingly, winked at me, and said, "You should stop by sometime. We've got some new fabrics that would look perfect on you." I didn't respond. Qin Yan didn't return until late that night, his face dark, clearly in a foul mood. I warmed a pot of wine and brought it to him, only to run into Wei Song in the hallway. As we passed each other, he called out to me, holding my gaze for a long time. "Xiao Bai," he said finally with a soft smile, "it's nothing. Just the night air is damp lately. Be careful not to catch a chill." I smiled back. "You too." I knew what he had meant to say at first. And he, seeing the look in my eyes, surely knew what I had chosen not to say. My mother once said, "Love is the one thing in this world that defies all logic." In the end, I chose to hand in a blank answer sheet. 06. The dungeon was dark and damp. My hands were tied to a wooden post, and my legs were submerged in freezing cold water. Even the air felt sticky, clinging to my skin and weighing down my chest. It was suffocating. I'd long heard this was where Qin Yan tortured people. I never thought he'd personally throw me in here. That night, he had been drinking heavily. His eyes held the haze of alcohol. He took my hand, and the words that followed made my heart skip a beat. Bai, do you trust me?" I froze. Then he said again, "When I accomplish my great task, I'll make sure you never have to worry again. After this, I won't let you suffer anymore. Bye. Are you willing to believe in me? Only then did I realize. His eyes were perfectly clear. Qin Yan was always a man who prioritized power above all else. I should have known better. But why did he ask me that? Back then I said, I believe. I didn't know what kind of deal he had made in exchange for whatever gain he wanted. I never expected to be the price. No one came to see me. No food. Nothing. This was the third day. I hadn't eaten a single bite. Now and then, something would brush against my skin underwater, making me shiver. But after a while, my legs went numb from the cold, and I could no longer feel a thing. My body was slowly losing its warmth. So cold. In my days, I thought of my mother again. My father died young. My mother was a cook in a noble household. The masters treated us harshly. The monthly wages barely kept the two of us alive. My mother was beautiful, and the other servants hated her for it. I overheard them whispering more than once, calling her a fox spirit and me a little vixen. Said we were shameless, that we brought bad luck, that I'd cursed my father to die. Only the old nurse who worked in the kitchen was kind to us. She said I looked like her granddaughter. She always saved me something good to eat. The young masters and ladies of the house looked down on me, bullied me, mocked me for not knowing how to read. But my mother taught me. She would trace my name into my palm, one stroke at a time. As in the cypress tree. A cypress that grows even on the edge of a cliff, roots cracking through stone. A survivor, even in the harshest place. I held on, barely breathing, fighting the urge to pass out. So cruel, Qin Yan. Did you really harden your heart this much? You lured me in with just enough tenderness to make me leap. But the way he murmured that night, wait for me, it didn't feel like a dream. Maybe that was fake too. In a blur, I thought I saw a glimmer of light at the end of the passage. 07. It was Wei Qing who carried me out of the dungeon. The light outside was blinding. My whole body was limp, but I could feel his hands trembling slightly. I couldn't open my eyes, but I could hear Qin Yan's panicked shouting, his voice full of rage. He and Wei Qing were arguing. Someone pressed their hand to my forehead, applied medicine to my legs. 3 days and nights. My legs were swollen and numb. When I finally woke up, I stared blankly at them for a while. I tried moving them a little, and only then did I finally let out a breath of relief. I didn't know if it was my body's resilience or the medicine's effectiveness, but I was starting to recover. When I saw Qin Yan again, his expression was calm, as though nothing had ever happened. He still called me Abai. I couldn't remember when he first started calling me that, but whenever he said it, there was always a hint of tenderness in his voice. I looked at him with the same calm expression. In the end, it was he who looked away first. Shuyan will be staying at the residence for a while, he said. During that time, you'll stay by her side and keep her safe. Yes, understood, my lord. Maybe I sounded too formal, too detached. Qin Yan paused slightly, but in the end, said nothing more. I emptied my mind and exhaled slowly. Shuyan moved in quickly. Qin Yan had built her a special courtyard called Linyun Pavilion, right near his own residence. He ordered me to do everything I could to protect her. Just before he left, I couldn't help but ask, even if it costs me my life? Qin Yan stood with his back to me, silent for a long time. Finally, he said, yes, I'll buy. Even if it costs you your life. I had once taken an arrow for Qin Yan. Over the years, he had made many enemies. There were plenty who wanted him dead. That day was an ordinary outing. Halfway through the journey, assassins attacked. The scene was chaos. Blades flashing, arrows flying. I had just taken down one attacker when a hidden arrow flew straight at Qin Yan. There was no time to stop it. I threw myself in front of him and took the arrow instead. He turned around in shock. It was the first time I ever saw panic in his eyes. Those people really wanted him dead. The arrowhead had been poisoned. The pain was so intense it felt like my bones were breaking. Luckily, the arrow hadn't hit any major vessels, and the treatment came in time. But still, I was unconscious for 2 days. In the haze of that night, I vaguely heard Qin Yan's voice, low and strained. Abai, just wait a little longer for me. But now his voice was calm.
Cold even.
If you're my shadow guard, then she is your master. Protecting your master is a shadow guard's duty. 08. This was my first time meeting Xu Yun. But she didn't like me. Raised with love and privilege, the Prime Minister's daughter didn't bother hiding her dislike. She didn't even pretend. She suddenly asked, "What's it like in the water dungeon?" I froze. She giggled, bright and amused. "Didn't you just get a taste of it not long ago? Don't tell me you've already forgotten." My fingers curled into my palm, and I said nothing. Xu Yun just smiled more radiantly. "I told Qin Yan I was curious how long someone could last in there, and he sent you in himself." I bit my lip, my chest tightening. So the 3 days and nights I endured had only been because of a single passing comment from Xu Yun. But I looked up and met her smiling eyes. "So what?" Her face changed, the warmth in her gaze fading, replaced by a cold sneer. Of course, she knew what my role beside her was. So she would deliberately hurt herself a little, then tearfully complain to Qin Yan, just to see me punished. Maybe kneeling for hours. Maybe having my meals withheld. Or something worse. Since Xu Yun moved into the prince's residence, Qin Yan's influence had grown rapidly. He'd snatched several credits that should have gone to the crown prince, and even the emperor had begun to shower him with praise. Qin Yan was busier than ever. When Xu Yun flung herself into his arms with reddened eyes, he would only hold her tightly and whisper comfort. And she would shoot me a secret smile behind his shoulder. When I tried to explain, I got double the punishment. Qin Yan's voice was cold, his eyes unfamiliar. "Abai, surely you know the rules of completing a mission. Only the result matters. The process is irrelevant." It happened enough times that I stopped caring. Even though I noticed the bruised bomb sitting by the window, the extra portion of food left for me in the kitchen, and other silent forms of compensation, I'd glance at them but never touch them. Instead, one day, when Xu Yun was peeling fruit again, putting on another little performance with the knife dancing close to her fingers, I moved first. I reached out my own wrist. The blade was sharp. It sliced my skin open in a flash, beads of blood welling up. Xu Yun paled in horror and screamed, pushing my arm away. "What's wrong with you? Are you crazy?" Expressionless, I wiped the blood dripping from my wrist, leaving crimson smears.
Milimetrów. I'm crazy.
Just figuring that out now. After that, she didn't dare play those games again. She started keeping her distance, like she really believed I was unstable. Only the result matters. The process is irrelevant. So why should I accept this sweet treat after the slap? I chose instead to eliminate the reason for the slap altogether. 09. Sometimes, life in the prince's residence was excruciatingly dull. The world was so vast, and I'd never had the chance to really see it. The flowers in the garden were blooming. I crouched in the corner by the wall, feeding a kitten. I found it the year before last. It had been on the brink of starvation. I nursed it back to life with relentless care. Scratching its belly, I murmured, little raccoon, what do you think it's like to live freely? Is there any place in this world where I truly belong?" Why aren't you answering me?"
Oh, right.
"You can't talk." The kitten lay belly up, eyes squinting, purring contentedly.
Ah.
"Where did this little raccoon come from?" Xu Yun's voice rang out suddenly. Before I could stop her, she reached toward it. The kitten's fur puffed up instantly. It bared its teeth and arched its back, hissing at her and ready to pounce.
Ah.
Xu Yun jumped back. I quickly grabbed the kitten by the scruff, but not before its claws tore into her dress. This beast. Qin Yan heard the commotion and came over, his gaze landing on me. I was about to speak when Xu Yun interrupted. She exaggerated the story with vivid flair, then pointed at the kitten and made her judgment. "It's dangerous. It nearly scratched me. It should be put down." "If you hadn't startled it, it wouldn't have reacted that way," I said, barely holding back my anger, shielding the kitten in my arms. It didn't even touch you. Ah, bye. Qin Yan warned me in a low voice. He gently soothed Xu Yun, promising to take care of it, and urged her to go rest. Then he looked at me. Seeing me step back warily, he sighed helplessly. His eyes looked wounded. You don't even trust me anymore? I lowered my gaze and smiled bitterly. Should I? Qin Yan froze, wanting to speak but stopping himself. And then, maybe it was my imagination, but I heard a hint of weariness in his voice. Ah, bye, it's not what you think. I hated that phrase. My mother had taken her own life. She had been beautiful, and a young master had set his sights on her. One night, drunk, he forced himself on her. Afterward, they tied my mother's hands and dragged her to the courtyard, saying she had tried to seduce him, dreaming of becoming the lady of the house. I screamed and charged at them, but was held back. They wore false masks of pity as they said to me, "It's not what you think. This is the truth."
But
I had seen it. I looked up and saw my mother's eyes, filled with despair, hopelessness. She mouthed something to me, and then slammed her head against a stone. I understood her lips.
they are alive.
Don't tell me again that it's not what I think. I trust my eyes,
My ears.
my senses. So, what is it you want this time? Abai, trust me. I trust you, my lord.
10.
I received my first total extermination mission. Dressed in black, I slipped into the target estate under cover of night, only to find it already a scene of devastation. A man stood in the courtyard, covered in blood, bodies lying at his feet. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, then curved his lips into a faint smile. You did this. I tightened my grip on my sword, its tip pointed at his throat. Where are the others? They're all here, he replied unhurriedly, obediently. I already drove away the innocent ones. Behind him, a small head slowly peeked out, staring at me with wide eyes. I shifted my sword's aim toward the child, but he quickly raised a hand to block me. Breathing heavily, he spoke low. She's the servant's abandoned daughter. Just a pitiful child. If you must kill someone, kill me. She has nothing to do with this. Please spare her. Expressionless, I gave him a glance, then looked at the little girl. She stared at me blankly, shrinking back in fear. My brow twitched. Memories of my childhood began to resurface and flood my chest like a tide, so heavy I couldn't breathe. My mind faltered. The tip of my blade wavered. I took a step back. "Tu ku," I said. He looked surprised. What? You have 2/4 of an hour to get out of here. I leapt onto the rooftop with a flick of my foot. When time's up, I'll be back to clean up. As a shadow guard who kills for others, that was the greatest mercy I could offer. All these years, I thought I'd train myself to kill without hesitation, to carry out orders without leaving loose ends. Qin Yan told me, without emotion, you have no weakness. Without weakness, you're the best shadow guard there is. But when I truly faced it, I found my so-called steel defenses could be shaken and shattered with ease. I didn't know if I was being soft-hearted or simply trying to comfort the helpless child I once was. I perched on a treetop, knees tucked to my chest, silently watching the moon move across the sky, counting the minutes. I'd barely sat down when I heard rustling in the grass by the wall. I turned toward the sound. Before long, the grass parted and a small figure crawled out, then another. The man scrambled out behind the child, looking up just in time to meet my eyes. We stared at each other, wide-eyed on his part, flat on mine.
Really?
Through the dog hole? Under my mask, the corner of my mouth twitched. He rubbed his nose awkwardly and offered a sheepish grin. What a coincidence, Mississippi. We meet again. I said nothing for a while. Then I jumped down and tossed a fire starter into the courtyard behind us. The flames lit up my face. Follow me, I said coolly. Inwardly, I sighed. I had softened again. I found a temporary place for the two of them to stay and made sure they had food. He told me his name was Chi-E. Seeing that I didn't react, disappointment flickered across his face. In truth, part of the reason he had come was revenge. Years ago, his parents had been longtime servants of the household. Their wages had been withheld, and when they couldn't repay their debts, his mother was violated. His father rushed to protect her and was beaten to death. As Chi spoke, his tone was calm, almost detached, as if the story belonged to someone else. But a quiet frost hung in his eyes. Just then, the little girl ran over, bravely stuffing a still warm piece of candy into my hand. Chi said she had no name, no voice. When she was found, she had been silently crying under a bed. Abandoned in the chaos, no doubt, because no one would care about a mute girl. Not then, not now. I placed the candy in my mouth. A faint sweetness spread across my tongue, but all I could taste was bitterness. When my mother was alive, the two of us were always treated with contempt. After she died in injustice, all that hatred shifted onto me. I became the jinx, the cursed daughter, the burden. Back then, I didn't understand. Why would other women, also born daughters, look down on me so harshly? It took me years to learn. People instinctively look down on those weaker than them, as if they've claimed the moral high ground, eager to judge others from head to toe, inside and out, without mercy. So I understood the best relationship between people is no relationship at all. Don't treat anyone as your confidant. Don't pour out your heart to everyone you meet. Chi and I quietly watched the girl chase butterflies in the flower bed. I watched her for a long, long time until she finally tired and ran back to us. I once asked Nanny why I was named by. I wasn't as strong as a cypress, couldn't even protect my mother. She said a name is one's mark on this world, an expression of hope from the ones who love you. That's what makes it unique. So I crouched down and held the little girl's hand. Mingyu, I said softly, smiling. From now on, your name will be Mingyu, all right? Mingyu blinked, tears welling in her eyes. And I saw the moonlight again. 11. I thought once I completed that mission, my kitten would be safe. But the moment I stepped into the room, I was met with its cold, lifeless body. Its fur was matted, paws bloodied and torn. I froze in place. When I slowly looked up, I saw Qin Yan standing at the top of the stairs. His gaze flickered, avoiding mine. He rubbed his temples.
Bye.
Shu Yan just wanted to catch it and put it in a cage. And then, my breath quickened. You promised me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Everything I'd buried surged up and broke free like a dam bursting. I believed you. I believed you. Su Bai, calm down. It's just a cat. Qin Yan frowned, now clearly annoyed. What did you say? From his place above me, he looked down with indifference. I trained you to be the top shadow guard. You can't afford to be soft over irrelevant things. Like that beast. I clenched my fists, let out a low laugh, and gritted my teeth. Understood, my lord. Without another word, I gently picked up the kitten's body and walked out. That night, Shu Yan's room was filled with dozens of dead rats. She fainted from the fright and fell gravely ill. Qin Yan probably knew it was me, but I pretended not to notice the scrutiny in his eyes, and he never came to question me. Because yes, over irrelevant things, there should be no softness. So then, what did one little act of petty revenge matter? If anything, she should worry whether the kitten's spirit might come back to haunt her. I buried it carefully beneath the flower bush it loved to nap under. After the burial, I sat in silence for a long, long time. As for this place, I realized I had nothing left to hold on to anymore. I wanted to leave. The sooner, the better.
12.
Qin Yan and Shu Yun were getting married soon. Wei Qing told me while I was searching for ointment for Mingyu. Her small body was covered in bruises, some deep purple, some pale green. Shocking to see. When I heard the news, I just responded with a simple, okay, not really caring. It dawned on me belatedly that I hadn't paid attention to anything related to Qin Yan in quite some time. Even when rumors spread that their feelings had deepened and Qin Yan had offered an extravagant betrothal gift to win Shu Yan's hand, I remained indifferent. He was busy. During this time, I often found excuses to leave the residence and visit Qi and Mingyu. Wei Qing hesitated before saying, Xiao Bai, You don't have to take it to heart. The prince said. Brother Wei. I cut him off with a smile. Everything before, it's all in the past. We're just people carrying out orders. Sooner or later, we'll go our separate ways. I really don't mind. There wasn't much else to say.
It was always bound to end this way.
Lately, I'd been spending more and more time with Qi Yi and Mingyu. We went on spring outings, flew kites, picked wildflowers, chased rabbits. Once, in the grass, Mingyu found a kitten with a broken leg. She picked it up and carefully bandaged the wound. Slowly, it even started limping around. I couldn't help but get drawn into that kind of life. There was something unreal about it. Like life finally had meaning. During the annual Lantern Festival, I covered my face with a veil and joined them in the crowded streets. Chi handed me a skewer of candied hawthorn. The bright red berries were wrapped in glistening sugar. I lifted my veil and took a cautious bite. Sweet and sour burst on my tongue. I pressed my lips together. The first time I ever celebrated a festival or walked through the city was with Qin Yan. I had never had the luxury to celebrate. Just surviving was hard enough. Joy, celebration, holidays, none of it had ever belonged to me. The only memory I had of those days was seeing the young masters and ladies of the house all dressed up. On festival days, they left me alone. Sometimes, if the master was in a good mood, we'd be given scraps of food or a few coins. When Qin Yan brought up going out for the festival, it felt like a dream I'd waited forever to come true. I was so flustered I couldn't speak properly. Qin Yan's brows relaxed, and a rare smile sparkled in his eyes. He tapped my forehead gently. What's this? So happy you've gone stupid? He always bought me sweets, amused by how I stuffed my cheeks full. Anything I looked at more than once, somehow it would appear in front of me like a magic trick. Qin Yan wasn't the type to seek attention in public. But when I pointed at the highest, farthest lantern, he just sighed lightly, then smiled. Watch closely. He raised his bow, knocked the arrow, and let it fly. The arrow spun through the air, trembling at the shaft, but the tip struck clean through the red silk at the top of the lantern, earning cheers from the crowd. He handed the lantern to me with the softest eyes I had ever seen, like spring water. He said, "If Abai wants something, I'll make sure she gets it." The present noise brought me back. I turned to see Qi Yi struggling to win a lantern for Mingyu. But he wasn't very good with the bow. His arrows flew off target, or didn't have enough force. Mingyu's eyes sparkled with hope. She didn't complain, just stood silently, cheering him on with all her might. Qi Yi, on the other hand, was sweating bullets. I chuckled quietly and stepped forward, taking the bow from him. Draw, aim, release, all in one fluid motion. The arrow hit the bullseye.
Ki stared, stunned.
Miss Bai, you're really good at archery. Because Qin Yan taught me. Every move, every skill, I'd spent 8 years learning from him. How could I not be good? Mingyu cradled the lantern happily and skipped ahead, but suddenly, I felt someone watching me. The gaze was hot, piercing. Uneasy, I didn't look back. I lowered my head and slipped away with the crowd. Later, I tried to find whoever it was, but the gaze had vanished. Yet the unease in my heart only grew stronger. 13. It was already deep into the night when I returned to the residence. Just as I was about to push open my door, someone grabbed my wrist. The door was shoved open, then shut behind us, trapping me in a firm embrace. A hoarse voice murmured by my ear, "You're finally back, Abai. I waited so long for you." I panicked and tried to pull away, but Qin Yan refused to let go. Moonlight spilled into the room, illuminating the sharp glint in his eyes. His tone was icy and commanding. "Where did you go?" Before I could answer, he added, "Where have you been all this time?"
And
Abai, you press your lips together when you lie. He brushed the corner of my mouth with his thumb, then brought it to his lips. His eyes turned even colder. Hawthorn candy. I turned my face away, unable to speak. The man who had always been calm and composed completely lost control. He grabbed my chin and kissed me hard, not with tenderness, but with a fury that bordered on madness. I was trapped, unable to move. The flood of indignation and hurt made it hard to breathe. Qin Yan froze for a moment. Then I shoved him away with all my strength and instinctively slapped him across the face. Pain burned on my lips. Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and uncontrollable. Qin Yan's face tilted from the slap. He stared at me in disbelief, eyes locking onto my tearful ones. Abai, don't you love me? His eyes reddened. His expression was obsessive, desperate. You care about me, I know you do. So why are you with another man?
So he'd known.
I was foolish to think that silence could hide what the heart reveals through the eyes. But now I wanted nothing more than to cut all ties. I wiped my lips roughly. Once I calmed down, my voice turned cold, detached. My lord, don't overthink. You and Miss Xu are a perfect match. As for you and me, we're just master and servant. We were always meant to part. The words had barely left my mouth when the storm in Qin Yan's eyes intensified. His face darkened. It seems I've been far too lenient lately, so much so that you dare think of leaving. His voice was icy now, emotionless. His eyes glinted with dangerous cold. I froze. Then I heard him grit his teeth, every word sharp and clear. I won't allow betrayal. Especially not from you, Abai.
14.
This time, Qin Yan locked me in the dungeon. Not long after, Qi Yi was also brought in. Before Qin Yan left, I stared directly into his eyes, not blinking once. Abusing your power to imprison the innocent. So this is what Prince Li's integrity looks like? Qin Yan scoffed dismissively, towering above me. He looked at me deeply and said, You know exactly what kind of man I am, Abai. After all these years, no one should know it better than you. The strength drained from my body. I slumped slightly, filled with regret. Maybe from the very beginning, I should never have gotten involved with anyone else.
In the end, even Qi Yi was dragged down with me.
He was in the cell right next to mine, separated by a wall, offering me comfort through the stone. He told me he had already sent Mingyu to stay with a trustworthy old woman. I didn't need to worry. Wei Qing came to see me. His expression was heavy with reluctance, his eyes locked on mine. I smiled at him, eyes curved. All these years, he had truly been like an older brother to me. He had laughed with me, teased me, warned me over and over before missions, and when I came back from training utterly exhausted, he'd magically produced the sweets I loved most. I had once confided in Wei Qing that I wanted to leave. I thought he'd try to talk me out of it. But he didn't hesitate. He simply patted the top of my head with gentle affection. Xiaobai, if you need anything, just say the word. I'll help you. That day, though there was a trace of sorrow in his eyes, there was also quiet relief, a sense of peace. He looked up at the small square of sky visible from the courtyard. Xiaobai, you were never meant to be trapped in a cage like this. Just keep moving forward. The world is vast. Somewhere out there, there's a place for you. He was right. It's time for me to go find where I truly belong. 15. To ensure Qin Yan's wedding procession went smoothly, the royal guards were dispatched elsewhere. Outside, a 10-mile-long bridal parade painted the streets in red and gold, joyful and clamorous. By comparison, no one paid much attention to those of us locked in the dungeon. Using the key Wei Qing had given me, I unlocked the iron door. There were traps inside the dungeon. Even with the layout map and all my caution, I still missed a hidden floor mechanism. Just in time, I shoved Qi Yi aside, narrowly avoiding the barrage of arrows that shot out from every direction. That close call left me breathless. Only then did I feel the cold sweat soaking my back. Abai! The world spun. Qi Yi had pulled me into his arms. A strange warmth seeped into my palm, not scalding, but enough to make my hands tremble. Panicking, I looked down. A glaringly bright arrow was lodged in Qi's shoulder. He was pale but smiled through the pain. Good thing you're all right. If I hadn't shielded you, it would have hurt so much more. I was speechless. Mechanically, I tore a strip of fabric and pressed it to his wound, mumbling, I'm not afraid of pain. Why did you protect me? I'm really not afraid. As a child, no one protected me. Growing up, I became the one who protected others. I had long gotten used to carrying everything on my own shoulders, never imagining that one day someone would shield me without hesitation. Expressionless, I supported Chi forward. His steps faltered, but he tried not to lean on me too much. I reminded him flatly, "You can lean on me. I'm stronger than I look." He pouted and exhaled, muttering, "I'll buy strong, but you shouldn't carry everything by yourself. You'll wear yourself out." From a young age, I'd learned to endure, to keep everything inside. So I just lowered my head quietly, hiding the heat behind my eyes, and tightened my grip around Chi. We made it out of the dungeon. The exit was right in front of us. But just as we were about to step into the light, a flying dagger sliced past my ear, cutting a strand of hair before embedding itself in the wall ahead. Qin Yan's voice came from behind, cold, emotionless. Did you really think you could escape?" It was his wedding day, but he was dressed in black and gold robes, tall and regal. There was no joy on his face. His hair was disheveled, and under the sunlight, the storm in his eyes churned vividly. Guards quickly surrounded us in a tight circle. Qin Yan lowered his voice. If you come back now, I'll let it go." His gaze flicked to my hand, still around Qi Yi's waist. He pressed his lips together, annoyed. "I'll even let him go." Qi Yi stepped in front of me. "She's not going back." Qin Yan's face darkened. "And who are you to speak?" "Abai and I have 8 years of history." "Yes," I said, holding Qi Yi's arm, voice calm. "It's been 8 years. And I don't want to stay anymore." "Subai." Qin Yan's voice cracked, desperation creeping in. "You don't trust me?" He had lost his usual composure. His voice was strained, vulnerable. "Come back to me. I'll treat you well. No more missions, no more killing. I just want you back, safe and peaceful. Do you trust me?" I lowered my eyes, silent, then slowly walked toward him. Qi Yi grabbed my wrist, his face full of shock. I smiled softly, patted his hand, and gently pulled free. Step by step, I closed the distance between me and Qin Yan. And in the final few steps, he pulled me into a tight embrace, like I was some lost treasure finally returned. My mind went blank. I felt nothing. Qin Yan turned to shield me behind him. His gaze toward Qi Yi was filled with disdain. He began to issue an order, but the words choked in his throat. He turned back to me, stunned. His eyes were filled with grief, shock, confusion, emotions so intense they nearly suffocated us both. I had stabbed him with the very dagger he had crafted for me. He had trained me himself. He taught me how to fight close quarters, how to wield a blade. I was best with a dagger, quick, efficient, fatal. Now, that blade was buried in his body. Qin Yan's eyes turned bloodshot as he looked at me. I spoke clearly, word by word. "I don't believe you anymore." His lips trembled. He raised a hand, then let it fall. And yet, something in his eyes, so raw, so visible, cut into me. Blood poured down the hilt, soaking my hand. I pulled the blade out. It hit the ground with a dull clang. I had held back. I'd avoided any vital points. Qin Yan staggered, clutching his wound. He barely stayed on his feet, but raised his hand to stop the guards, who had only just begun to react. He coughed a few times, then exhaled, hoarse. "Go, both of you." After a long silence, I replied softly, "All right." I turned and once again supported Qi Yi as we walked away. Bye. I wasn't lying to you." I paused but didn't turn around. I stood still, listening as he spoke. His voice was pained, but also full of release, and, strangely, peace. "Bye, I love you." That was never a lie. He gave a bitter laugh. But there were too many things I couldn't say. In the end, this is what it came to. "From now on, I hope you live in peace, with joy and freedom." I bit my lip and rubbed my eyes. "Thank you, Qin Yan. And I hope the same for you. Peace, joy, and freedom." He taught me for 8 years. He gave me, however briefly, the feeling of a home. He watched me grow, helped shape me into who I am now. But between him and the crown prince, between power and politics, truth and lies had long blurred together. He had his path. I had mine. We were never meant to walk the same road.
So, this is goodbye. 16.
They say Qin Yan and Shu Yan never actually married that day. Maybe the grand wedding was just another calculated move on his part. Later, after years of scheming, Qin Yan finally succeeded in bringing down the crown prince. His power had already taken deep root throughout the court. Soon after, the emperor fell seriously ill, and Qin Yan assumed control of the court. The first thing he did after rising to power was to purge a group of corrupt officials, the prime minister among them. But none of this had anything to do with me anymore. Qi Yi asked me what I planned to do next. I stood atop a mountain, gazing into the distance. The world is so vast. I've never really gone out to see it. Maybe my first stop will be a temple to offer prayers. After all, I've taken many lives. I carry a lot of sins. I want to pray for my mother and for Nanny too, so that in their next lives, they won't have to suffer like they did. Mingyu wandered up to me, clearly wanting to tag along. Qi Yi, ever the shameless one, pouted. No way. 2 girls out there on your own? What if you run into danger? I'm going too. I rolled my eyes at him, only to meet his gaze head-on. He had dropped his usual teasing smile. His voice was serious, sincere. After I got my revenge, I felt lost. But you too, you're the ones who gave me a future to walk toward. Well, so be it. There's a long road ahead. The sun dipped below the horizon. The moon rose, casting a silver glow over the world.